blocks up, so probably not. But.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's right in that 5th to 7th Avenue is kind of where they end, I think. So you may be, because you're at like 5th and 2nd or so, right? Where are you, 5th? 7th.
My stomach gets in the way.
Just
You might be in that.
At 9.
You might be in that little dead zone there. We can look up your address too,
Reason for coffee. That's a reason for coffee.
Just because I did it like,
This will be fair and balanced, right?
What do you mean?
I'm just trying to be funny.
The appointment? Oh.
No, I meant the audience participation.
was that echo?
Good question. That remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that this is, can't see
Well,
them.
you're an advocate of the people,
I am.
so I'm sure that
Yes.
you're
Does everyone finish up your conversations here and silence your phones?
Sometimes. Yeah,
Going here in
sometimes.
About 30 seconds. Thank you, Jason, for fixing our lovely clock.
I don't have any glass plates. There might be some back there.
Train is passed. Back in business again. All right. The TV crew, we're going to get going here in 5, 4, 3. Good evening, Canby. Welcome to Canby City Council special meeting for November, oh, sorry, I'm rushing ahead, October 26th, 2016. If you please stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Dear Lord, thank you for this great city. Thank you for the leaders that are assembled here on the dais and here in the audience and those at home. Please guide our words, provide us wisdom, provide us grace with each other and our conversation and our words tonight. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Good evening, and thank you all for being here. Just a reminder to council, if you're not speaking, or just be aware your microphones are on. If you have it off and you want to speak, there is a slight delay, so just be cognizant of that, please. Before we get going into citizen input, I understand that, Councilor, you have a motion you need to make?
Yeah, I do. Okay. So I've got a few points to make about the proceedings tonight, which maybe some of you are aware of. So I've heard a lot of public outcry about our decision to do this over the last few weeks. So September 21st was the day that we made the decision to appoint, and we had a letter that kind of started out the public feedback process. We had a letter from Robert Bitter at that point, and then we made the decision to appoint now during this meeting. So we opened it up in October, as you know. Deadline was the 14th, and here we are today. But since then, the Canby Herald has come out, and there were 6 letters against protesting that appointment to appoint before the election, and a couple more letters, and then 6 people testified the last meeting, and lots of individuals have come to me, and maybe my fellow councilors, I'm not sure, but they've let me know that they don't think it's right to do it this way. So I've got to thinking, and I wanted to talk about that, that they wanted to listen to the voters instead of have the council appoint in the middle of an election. And it really is the middle of an election. The timing is it's just not good timing. I mean, we all have our ballots. Some of you have already voted, I haven't. But we're in the middle of an election, and so I think, well, a lot of you have said, let's wait till after the election. I think that's wise. Councilor Roach is not here tonight. His last day is next Wednesday, so that will be his last day on council, and we're scheduled to actually swear in the person who we appointed appoint tonight during that time. So the vacancy is not official. It's kind of an awkward timeline because it's not officially vacant as far as I can tell if he's going to be coming next week. And so that throws the timeline off even more. It makes it even stranger. Like, well, that's only 6 days before the ballots are all due on November 8th. So I think the timing there is, it's rushed and it looks short, and that's what a lot of the public has told us via newspaper and emails, etc. We can decide who the most qualified candidate is today and then appoint them next Wednesday, but then they'll only be there about a week until the election results are in on the 8th, and then we'll know what our new council will look like. Of course, we wouldn't take, the new people, if they're elected, wouldn't take office until January, but nonetheless, the person we pick today to do the best job might not be the person we pick after November 8th. So I think if we just wait a couple weeks, that would give the people a chance to vocalize their opinion via their vote. We have the charter issue, which has come up, and to follow our charter, the charter states that, as the mayor has read, but vacant elective offices in the city shall be filled by appointment by a majority vote of the council. So no timeline is attached. We don't have to do that within a couple weeks or a couple months. We can do that as we wish. And I would say if we do it after November 8th, then it's a win-win. We're doing what the council shall do, as the charter tells us, but we're also listening to the citizens, and that's what we're also elected to do, is listen to citizen input and give feedback, and if we make a mistake, to then correct our mistake according to what the right thing to do might be. There's also been talk, in the newspaper and whatnot, about it looking kind of bad, that a majority up here might appoint a friend, and it looks like, is there favoritism? In the newspaper there was the article about cronyism. Whether that's true or not, I think doesn't matter as much as if it appears to be that way, then we have a responsibility to talk to the public about why we're making this decision, so it doesn't look like we're just rushing a decision and appointing somebody to maybe maintain a certain majority, as people have mentioned in letters and emails, etc. So I think we're making a mistake by doing this tonight, and that's why I'm speaking. Speaking of the fourth vote getter, a lot of people last week talked about that. About 3 people said, hey, maybe we should just appoint the fourth vote getter. We never really responded to that directly. I'm not advocating that we do that as a council, but I think it would be helpful to see how the votes shake out before we make our decision after November 8th. If there is somebody that loses by like 10 or 50 votes, then maybe we would say, oh, that person has been vetted by the community. They tried hard, or they went door to door, or they got a lot of votes. Great, they got probably thousands of votes will be cast. That person we want. But it's nice to be able to see that. Maybe somebody, the fourth vote getter, will lose by 300, and at that point, do we appoint them? I don't know. But it's nice to have the luxury of data before we make that appointment. And so that's, again, why I advocate for doing it after the election results come in on November 8th. The question also people have asked, well, if somebody's voted off, does that mean we don't want them and we're listening to the public? Like, it's a good question. If we vote them off, then maybe we don't want them. How do we listen to the voters? It's something we have to decide what perspective we're going to have on who loses as the fourth and fifth vote getter. Nonetheless, I would recommend that we open that pool up with the 5 of you that are here tonight, plus the fourth and fifth vote getter, if they indeed want to put their name in the hat after the election results come in. Also, our council values and goals. I hold this document dearly to me. Actually, I have it always posted in my home office. There are 5 values. One of them is honesty, ethics, and accountability. It says we adhere to the highest standards of honesty, ethical conduct, and accountability that inspire public confidence and trust. These are the foundations of public trust and confidence. And we do work to do that up here, and sometimes, though, I think the appearance of it is that it's questionable. Like, are they being accountable? Are they trustworthy? And when that happens, I think we owe it to the public to be honest about that and forthright and show that, yes, we are trying to be accountable and forthright. And I think this is a great opportunity to delay this process to show that we are trying to be accountable and honor our ethical code. So that's another reason that I think it's important that we wait and delay. What else was I going to say? Yeah, so the timing, I have to say, or wait, I was going to say we have the opportunity to show that we want to build up the trust from the public, which appears to be a bit broken right now, so I would like to, again, seize that opportunity to do that tonight. If we make a poor decision in rushing and some people don't like that word, we're rushing the appointment. Well, if we made a poor decision by appointing in the middle of an election, which the majority has voted to do, and we think it's wrong, I think it's okay to go back and say, you know what, maybe we should delay it, even though it's inconvenient, absolutely. All the applicants are here ready to be interviewed, and I do apologize for the timing of that. But it's also okay to have the humility and do the right thing if called upon to do so. So in short, thank you very much for the applicants that care so much about Canby, want to join the leadership team here of Canby, set our vision, execute our policies, and join us. I appreciate your time in the application process, and I'm sorry that I'm just bringing this up now. It just slowly occurred to me over the weeks that, you know, I need to say something and try to stop this process if possible because of all the emails and the outcry I've heard, but I wasn't allowed to do it last week because it wasn't technically on the agenda, and it has to be, the topic has to be on the agenda before a counselor can make such a motion. So now I have the opportunity, but of course the timing is awful, I'm sorry, because here you are ready to interview, and which you still might do depending on how my motion goes. So I'm going to make a motion, but maybe could I ask, I'm sure other counselors will want to respond to me, but I'd like to ask the rest of you maybe why you think it's in the best interest of the city to do it today rather than waiting 2 weeks.
So a motion needs to be made first and
Before?
seconded
Okay.
before discussion can occur.
So no discussion, thank you. So I then move that we discontinue this application and interview process until after the results of the November election are in and reopen the vacated seat for the applications then.
Motion's been made by Councilor Height. Is there a second? Seeing none, we'll consider the motion not moving forward. Thank you, Councilor. Appreciate your words there. So the parliamentary policy rules being, Councilor Height made a motion to change the process or end the process this evening and to pick it up after the election. So when I know I'm explaining the process. So when there's a motion on the table to push for further dialogue or a vote of the motion, there needs to be a second of that motion.
I understand that. I can't believe none of you are going to second that.
Okay.
So no further discussion, Mayor?
So no.
Is that right? Okay.
All right. So we'll move into it's our opportunity for citizen input and community announcements, and I have a stack card. This is an opportunity for visitors to address the council on items not on the agenda. It is also time to address for items that are on the agenda but not scheduled for a public hearing. And each citizen will be given 3 minutes to give testimony. Citizens are required to fill out a yellow card. If you have done so already, I have it. They're in the back there. If you want to fill one out and pass it through Joe, our city attorney, and our assistant city manager, Amanda, that would be great. First up is Lois Brooks. And Lois, if you want to come here to the center table, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lois Brooks. I live here in Canby. I'm a retired human resources executive, and in that role, I wrote and created policies, processes, and procedures. I love policies, processes, and procedures. However, in the course of my career, I found that there is no policy, process, or procedure that does not require the application of good judgment and common sense. And I see a huge lack in that we're not delaying the choice of a councilman until after the election. I think the people do need to be heard. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Well, it's a dark and stormy night. We're gathered here, and I'm in favor of the process that you're following currently. It has been what we have done in the past. There are, in my observation, you have a vocal handful of folks that would like to bend the rules to their own benefit, and I think that is wrong. You have rules, you have procedures, and I think that they should be followed, and I think that's exactly what you're doing. Thank you.
Sir. Bob Backstrom.
Good evening, people. I'm Bob Backstrom. I've lived in Canby for 40 years. I've seen a lot of mayors and councilors and city administrators and lawyers and other officials come and go. I want to thank you for all the hard work you've put in, and I want to thank you for allowing us to vote on important health and safety issues such as marijuana and such as this beautiful library building. That shows you're open and inclusive, and that you trust the people who are in this city, and that speaks volumes about you, and I truly appreciate that. I want you to know that I have a lot of friends in this town. I've been here a long time. I have some enemies too. But for everyone here tonight who's trying to convince you to change your procedure, there are twice as many people at home who are saying to you, continue with what you're doing. We like the way you're running this city. You have no other option. This is an established procedure, and it would be arrogant of you to change that procedure simply because there are some people who don't like what you're doing. The right thing to do is that the majority of the council agreed to do, and that is to hold the process separately from the election and select the most qualified person. I'm going to read from my notes. I hope that Daniel won't hold that against me. It's important that I make all of my points, and I don't want to forget them. That would be irresponsible of me to just shoot from the hip and go home and say, damn, I wish I would have remembered to say something. So after you allowed the citizens to vote on the library, civic center, and the marijuana issue, no one can accuse you of being dictatorial. You've been fair and open. And I say, without an exhaustive application and interview process, such as what you're going through tonight, how can you be sure that you will find a better person just because they ran for office? That's just conjecture. And as Tracy Height said, if someone loses by 4 votes, we should consider that person. If they lose by 300, we shouldn't. So somewhere in between, there's a slippery slope. Where is the exact number that you should consider them and where shouldn't you? This is not the way we run
Mr. Baxter,
government. Yes.
You have 1 minute, and please direct your comments to me, please.
We have 1 minute.
You have 50 seconds left on your
I'm
comments.
finished. I'm finished.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Mr. Bill Fenton. Evening, sir. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. My name is Bill Fenton. I've lived in Canby for give or take 30 years, give or take a few. I wrote a letter to have been read aloud at the City Council meeting on the 19th. For whatever reason, it wasn't read aloud, and so I took the day off from work today so I could be here and read it myself. I find it an interesting contrast that when Mayor Hodson came into office, one of your first actions was to put a halt to the forward movement toward the new library. Despite the forfeiture of many, many thousands of dollars, you presented yourself as a champion of the public's right to vote on matters pertaining to our community. Now, however, you and certain members of the City Council are demonstrating what seems to be a complete disregard for the wishes of those same voters. This begs the question, why this change in sentiment? Yes, there is the precedent that the council appoints to fill vacancies, but this is undoubtedly a unique situation. This appointment would take place less than 2 weeks before the November election. Of important note, this election has the potential to change the face of the City Council. Which brings me back to my question. Why the shift from a stated position of caring for the wishes of the voting public to one of showing a disregard for their wishes? In my mind, at least, the answer is obvious. You and certain councilors are afraid of possibly losing a majority who share your views. If this is true, it represents a political philosophy of winning at any cost. Ethics and the will of the people be damned. Canby deserves and expects better than this. I humbly ask the council to delay this appointment until after the election. Let the voters participate in this important process. Let the voters participate in the direction we take our community. Who knows? You may end up getting what you wished for all along, but you would be able to say that you had the mandate of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Kay Fenton.
So my name is Karen Fenton. I've lived in Canby for over 30 years. And I feel like I'd just like to start off saying that, to echo what my husband just said, of that if you weren't afraid of the public's opinion, then why not have a discussion right here tonight, since this is what this meeting has been called for. To not even discuss it amongst yourself by seconding a very serious opinion that was made seems to me to be totally ludicrous. So, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, there have already been many arguments presented to you as to why this appointment should be delayed until after the election 12 days from now. Rather than repeat all those arguments, I'd like to ask you to delay this appointment with an argument from an ethical point of view. Irene Konyev has waged a strong campaign to win the election to a seat on the City Council. And Irene has also asked that her name be taken into consideration for appointment to the vacant seat. This puts her in a very awkward position of having to be interviewed by and be voted on by the very people she has been campaigning against. How on earth can this possibly be fair or ethical? And so I ask you, please let the voters participate in this matter. Let the process be clear and without the taint of bias. No matter the eventual outcome, let the voters have their say in less than 2 weeks from now. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize, Karen. Thank you. Pamela White.
I just have to say this, I'm back. Yeah, I'm bitterly disappointed in all of you except Tracy. Congratulations, Tracy, thank you. That was very nobly and very courageously done. The letter did go to the county clerk. I'm sure none of us who live in Clackamas County are surprised that I did not hear back from our illustrious county clerk. So the choice, as I understand it, that I have is I may now contact the Secretary of State. Another choice that I have is to actually file an injunction, hire a lawyer and file an injunction, which may be the choice that I will do. So I just want to let you all know that I think that you are making a mistake. I actually don't care who you, ironically, don't care who you appoint. I don't necessarily think that you need to appoint someone who is running. I think that you need to, I do not think that you are following your own charter. And therefore, or our charter, as it were, since I am a citizen of Canby, and because while you shall appoint, you have the right as the council, you shall appoint, there's another part of that charter that says that that person may only serve until January 2017 if you appoint them before the general election, which is in 2 weeks. If you wait till after the election, they can serve until 2019. That's the way that I read it, and I would be interested in someone else, another lawyer, sorry sir, being able to tell us whether that is the case or not. So I think you should be looking for that injunction, and have a nice evening.
Kathy Shane.
Good evening. I wanted to mention that I think there's a perception that some on the council and our mayor would like to retain a voting bloc that favors a particular political point of view. These are nonpartisan positions, yet when the first library was proposed before the council, we heard from this bloc that people they were hearing from didn't want a library. Yet, when the council decided to put it to a vote, 70% of our citizens said yes, they did want a library. I guess it's important, I think, that we have broad representation on our council that represents our diverse community. I have concern about one of the applicants. We have Councilor Hensley is an officer with the County Republican Party Another applicant, one of the applicants that's being considered is vice chair of the state Republican Party, and I understand he would step down if he were selected. But I just want to urge the council to select a candidate who represents not any outside influence or ideology, but represents our diverse community and comes from this community, willing to represent all. Thank you.
The cards that I have. Thank you all. I appreciate your comments. So the process going forward, we'll move into the new business, which is the city councilor applicant interviews and selection. So the process will go as this. The council will interview each candidate separately, one at a time. They have all drawn numbers prior to the start of the evening. Tyler Smith is first. Second is Josiah Rubio. Third is Jason Patton. Fourth is Sean Varwig. And fifth is Irene Konev. Each candidate has been given a set of questions prior to tonight. The City Council Mayor will be asking questions from there, as well as additional follow-up and potentially questions from their application. As part of the discussion, I asked that each councilor eventually, when we get to that point, narrow down your feedback and whatnot, to narrowing the field down to 2 candidates if you can. After you interview, we will sit up here and we will talk about you in front of you and all of the fine people here and on the TV. So we'll be gentle. I expect the council will be thorough and decide who is the best qualified, who can lead, and who can deliberate the issues of our city and be able to support council and staff. Council will render a decision this evening on the process that was established back in September. Those not selected tonight, thank you for applying. We appreciate it. I encourage you to tap into this passion for our city, and please seek out committees if you're not on one, or additional committees if you're on 1 or 2 already, as I think a number of you are. To the public, thank you all for being here this evening. I appreciate that. This meeting is in public. This is not a public meeting. We need to deliberate and we need to make the best decision that we can. I would ask that there be no comments from the audience, jeers or applause or laughs or outbursts. Council will be the ones asking the questions, and we will need to be the ones to deliberate the decision tonight. If need be, I will indeed call a recess to calm things down and or get us back on track, and doing so, if that means I need to clear here, I will. Are there any questions on the process at hand, Council? No? All right. Our first candidate then this evening, Mr. Smith. Evening, sir. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, sir,
sorry.
Nope. Just before you jump in, for the candidates, you'll be given an opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll ask the questions from here. You don't need to read down your sheet of each bullet point. We may ask all of them. We may ask only a few. So, with that being said, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council President, councilors. My name is Tyler Smith. Many of you know me because I have been serving our city now for the better part of 5 years. I've been on the Planning Commission. I've been the Vice Chairman of the Planning Commission. I've been the Chairman of the Planning Commission. And just the last part of the last year, I took a little bit of leave there, but I still continued to serve and offer my services when needed to the Planning Commission. So I have been serving. I've been offering myself to our city as a volunteer, just like you are, and am again doing the same. I'm offering to serve. One of the questions I'll address that real quickly is, why do I want to serve? That's probably one of the most important questions that could be here. And it's simply, that's because what I do. That's who I am. That's part of my fiber. I'm a servant to the people. I'm a man of faith, and I believe that to whom much has been given, much is expected. And that's how I try and enact my life. When we're in church at St. Patrick's, my wife, occasionally there's a song that comes on. It goes a little something like, go make a difference. Go make a difference. It's an old hymn. And she always elbows me and goes, "Oh, there's Daddy's song," and says that to our kids. And that's pretty much how it is. I'm not much of a socialite. If you watch my planning commission meetings that I run, sometimes I'll crack some jokes, but I'm mostly about business most of the time. I tend to have a pretty serious demeanor and a kind of a workaholic in a way. Not always my work, my job, but in volunteering. That's just kind of how I am and who I am. So I'm offering myself, as a planning commission member to fill this seat, and I'd be happy to fill this seat if you selected me. I grew up in a small town, a lot smaller than Canby and rural, but we were next to a town that was about like Canby's size. My family's from Hermiston, but we didn't grow up with much money. And I worked hard and earned through education, through my military service, through my jobs. This is my second career, what I have. And I offer those services to the city, to the various charities that I work for, to the nonprofits, yes, to my political party. I'd hate to think that, because all of you are a part of a political party, that someone's political party and the fact that some members of the audience don't like the fact that somebody's been too involved in too many things, been volunteering in too many places, would be a negative attribute. In fact, I would hope that would be a positive attribute. You've seen that I've given myself to this city. You've seen how I conduct meetings. You've seen how I take testimony and deal with our constituents. So you've seen how I act, how I interact with our public, and hopefully you've appreciated and respected, if not always agreed with, the decisions that I've made and the way that I've handled my meetings or handled decisions that we made as a planning commission. Now, I'm married with 2 kids. My kids are about to turn 6 and 9. I'm a former military man. I was in the 1249th Engineer Battalion in Salem. I went to undergraduate at the University of Oregon, went to Willamette for the College of Law. My hobbies. Well, one of my main hobbies, what I spend a lot of my free time doing, is coaching our kids. Coaching soccer, coaching football, coaching baseball, coaching basketball. Last year, in 2015, I think I coached 6 teams. During last fall, I coached 3 different teams at the same time. It's just how I am, is I like to give of myself and be involved in things. My other hobbies is boating, hunting, fishing, basketball, softball, and churches and nonprofits, helping them. My law firm, we've guided and set up a lot of businesses and nonprofits and charities. So we're intimately involved with them and their goings-on. Oftentimes we're invited to their events to help out in their events, and we do a lot of that kind of thing. But also, why I'm running and how I got to be here. In 2007, I started my law practice here in Canby, in Graham Stationery Building, when it was still the stationery store down below. And seeing the parades go by, and seeing Wade Park, and being a participant in the Halloween trick-or-treating, and seeing the Say No to Drugs parades, and seeing all these things over the years, in the early years, warmed me up to Canby. My office was here, but I lived in Hubbard. At the time, I was a planning commissioner in Hubbard, and then I was a city councilor in Hubbard. So I have the relevant experience to what we'd be dealing with as a city councilor. And I gave up my city council seat in Hubbard to come and move to Canby. We loved it so much that I said, well, I like Hubbard. I'm helping to make Hubbard a great place, but I really love Canby. And so we bought a house up here, moved up here, and have made Canby our home ever since. So, with respect to the time commitment is not an issue for me. You may not believe it, but this will actually be sort of a lesser time commitment than what I'm used to. Somebody mentioned I'm the vice chairman of the state Republican Party. I'm involved in a lot of nonprofits. I helped found and lead the Christian Chamber of Commerce and many, many other boards and commissions and nonprofits. But my kids, like I said, are about to turn 6 and already 9. I coach a lot of their sports. It's time for me to stay home for a number of years and lessen my statewide commitments to my community and to my state and stay home with them. And so if I'm appointed to this position, I will gladly stay home, meetings and things will be closer to home. I won't be traveling all around the state. So it'll actually be a lesser time commitment. So I'll be happy to serve with you and all these boards and commissions. And to point out, I'll be happy to serve with anybody, even if other people are elected to this council, in the coming months. I'll be happy to serve whomever. Will I consider running for a seat in November of 2018 if I'm appointed? Well, yes, I plan on it. either to retain this seat or to run for one of the 2 open seats if I was not to be appointed. That would be coming up for office then. So what are the most pressing issues that face Canby? Well, I'd say the most pressing issues that face any city or any county, first of all, is crime and the provisioning of public safety and public services. Fortunately, because we've had good leadership and good guidance over the years, we don't have as big of a problem in those areas as a lot of other places do. I think they're still priority number 1 at all times, but fortunately we've been able to focus in large part on the major policy decisions. As Councillor Parker likes to talk about, we're doing the policy decisions of things like libraries. You know, and Canby, with the growth that we're experiencing, I would think our number 1 topic over the next few years is going to be, how are we going to deal with that growth? How are we going to deal with the housing needs? With most of the land starting to get used up inside the city limits, how are we going to handle transportation with the population growth that Oregon and Canby is experiencing? The redevelopment of downtown, how is that going to drastically shift the structure and the layout and the feel of Canby? I fell in love with the hometown feel of Canby. With my law firm, when you get to help start many of the businesses, you get to help guide many of the charities, you get to help people buy their property, sell their property, pass their property to their kids in a town, you get a feeling of hominess, of love, of ownership in the community. And that's why I have the desire and the willingness to give back to the community, spend my time like you do, volunteering in a board like the City Council or the Planning Commission. So, experiences, one of the questions was the experiences problem solving and dealing with crisis. Well, as an attorney, most of the people that come into my office come in and they're in crisis mode. I'm helping them and guiding them and helping them get through probably most of the time one of the most serious things that's going on in their life at the time. Whether they're getting sued, whether they're buying their first house or getting foreclosed upon or having some major catastrophe, they're in crisis mode, and problem solving is what we do all day long. Now, my particular methods for problem solving is to take an all of the above approach, to look at it from every angle. I am the quintessential outside-the-box attorney. We try and think of what's the source of the problem. Can we solve the source of the problem? Sometimes, and multiple times, we've actually sued the state legislature and gotten them to change laws because they didn't realize that there was some nuance or some defect in their state law that could just be fixed. We've gotten voluntary negotiations with people to fix the problems. Sometimes we'll look to the symptom of the problem. Is the client or the opponent looking at the symptom? Is there a way we can negotiate out or settle it? Settle the solution. Is there an outside-the-box abstract concept that we can solve that makes everybody happy? So we look at everything from top to bottom, whether it's political, whether it's legal, whether it's whatever, to solve these problems. And so an outside-the-box thinker is what I train all of my people in my law firm, all my attorneys to do, and that's absolutely something that we do. So that's how we solve problems. I'm known as an outside-the-box thinker to the judges in Clackamas County, opponents that we've gone up against. Sure, there are probably people, other attorneys out there that we've gone up against that don't like us, but for the most part, people start sending us referrals because we act zealously for our clients, and they like the way that we produce outcomes, good outcomes for our clients. Do I have any specific goals, improvements, agendas is one of the questions. Well, one of the first things I'd like to do is step in and continue the good work that you guys have been doing. I'm one of those that wasn't planning to run this November because I was happy with the current incumbents. I thought some of the things that you all have been doing in the last couple of years have been tremendous. I wasn't trying to upset the apple cart, or as some say, shift the balance of power. I know there are some that want to shift that balance of power. I wasn't motivated to do that. Now, when Commissioner Rocha decided to step down and I wanted to come back home and be close to the family, I thought, this is perfect. I can serve in my own community and stay closer to home. I would like to instill trust and confidence in the public. Now, how do you do that? How do I do that? It goes a little bit along with the unpopular decision question. I'm a fundamental believer that you speak the truth and I'm not worried about the consequences. If I'm not appointed, I won't be that upset. I dearly desire to be appointed because I want to serve my city and this is something that I want to do. But I'm one of those that speaks straight to the truth, straight up front. I don't hide behind, you beat around the bush, and that kind of thing. Sometimes people accuse me of being blunt. But the one thing I can tell you through years and years of experience being like that, some of you may be the same way, is that it endears trust in people. They know that if you disagree with them and you tell them why you disagree with them to their face in a polite way, they can at least trust what you're saying, that you're not a yes man, that you're not saying what you think they want you to say. And that's how I operate, is frank, open, and honest. Examples of working on part of the team, I've mentioned many of them. Planning commissions, City Council in Hubbard, here, the Chamber of Commerce, the Pacific Freedom Foundation. I run a company, Points for Profit, that donated last year over $2,200 to Canby Youth, Canby Kids, and some of the sports in Canby Kids. But I've been advising school boards, city councilors, county commissioners, state legislators for years and years and years. So I have intimate familiarity with what the decisions and the types of things that you have to deal with as a city councilor, so I'm ready to step into this role. One of the unpopular decisions I had to make is an example of being straightforward. We had the code about the two-story buildings in the downtown core area. The code was pretty clear that it said new buildings are supposed to be built to be 2 stories in the downtown core area. It wasn't a very popular decision, but it was pretty much right there. There was possibly some folks that wanted to say, well, let's just look past that. But when the law is the law, you follow the law until you change it. And so you all did a fantastic job, and now we have a, you know, after many, many different things and controversies and things, we have a fantastic result with this library. But that was not a popular decision that I participated in and the Planning Commission made with respect to the 2-story issue. So I hope that, I'd love to answer any questions. You're all being maybe too nice. I would hope that you would would find that I'm sort of a proven quantity, whether you agree with me politically or not. I don't really care. It's the fact that I've been a proven servant to this city, that you've seen me in action. I've been before you arguing for something as a member of the audience, as just a resident of Canby. And you've seen me, even with respect to the controversial flag issue, talk about looking at it from a different perspective. Sort of brokering some different medium ground there, a compromise position, that frankly nobody else that was there that day was talking about that exact compromise position. So I would love to be appointed, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and continue to serve our city.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate that. I have 2, and so I'll get the ball rolling in that regards. You mentioned here as your piece, and on your application, that you're involved in a number of activities here in Canby and around the state, and one of those being the head of the Republican Party, or involved in the Republican Party piece. Are you going to be able to put party dogma aside and be able to deliberate and be able to properly do what's best or make the decisions for the city with putting that aside?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's actually, you have to get a little bit creative and try and really think about where any, party dogma on one side or the other would really play into city business. So yes, I mean, party issues, I'm stepping back and away from that to help be in my home community. If I wanted to continue, campaigning and championing the principles of the party that I belong to, I would continue to do that. I'd rather stay home and help manage and foster our community, while my kids are young. So I can absolutely put, as you call it, party dogma aside and deal with the issues that we're dealing with as a city.
My follow-up to that then is, can you give us an example of when you've done that already, either in Hubbard or either as a planning commissioner here, or even dealing with the state party piece where you went contrary to the party dogma because it wasn't the best thing or the best decision to do?
Sure. A very vivid example of that we have to deal with almost every day on the planning every meeting, not every day, every meeting on the planning commission is property rights. The position of, for instance, the Republican Party, or most people in the Republican Party, would be for private property rights that are regulation-heavy land use system with the comprehensive planning and the goals and the heavy regulations is a long ways from what maybe a purist property rights person would advocate for. But in the planning commission meetings, we're constantly rezoning, dictating to people what they can and can't do, and you're balancing these issues. And there may not be exactly my perfect ideal policy for a state or a city to have, but I still helped guide and shepherd 2 cities amongst lots and lots of planning decisions, comprehensive plan amendments, annexation, zonings, all kinds of different things.
Thank you. And my last question that I have is, so what have you done in the last 60 days to prepare yourself to step into this role?
Well, I started coming to the last city council meetings and reading up on the minutes, but then I started seeing innuendo and things that weren't quite so favorable in the newspaper, and getting comments from people in the public that some of the city councilors were saying certain things to them. So I didn't go to the last one, and I didn't go to the debate over at Help Village, because I'm not interested in controversy. I'm interested in serving and helping the community. I really don't care if people want to say things about me or do background checks or whatever else, but so I started, after going to that first city council meeting, I didn't go to the next one, and just have read up online on other business that I'm not familiar with from the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Questions this to the right here? Anything?
I'll take a shot here.
Sure.
Tyler, first of all, thank you for serving on the Planning Commission. I often say that that's the toughest job in the city. Certainly you read a lot more material than we do as city councilors. So, being an attorney brings you, with all of the cases that you've had to work with. And I think there are some people that worry about your respect for diversity because of your most famous case. Can you address that?
Well, I would argue that there's no one that respects diversity and appreciates diversity more than me. As a Christian, I believe that all men and women and people are made in the image of God. And as a military man, most people know that the military, if anybody had any preconceived ideas, that's washed out of you real quick. But as a man of faith, to me, all people are created in the image of God, and that's the way I treat every person, based on their merits. I'm used to people coming into my law firm that are maybe less educated, and some are super educated but naive. And I deal with them all with the approach that I think is the most helpful to help them get the outcome that they're looking for. And so, you're talking about sweet cakes. I think that freedom is one of the most important principles that we have in this country and that our Constitution protects. Whether it's somebody's freedom to live the lifestyle that they want or marry the person they want, that's definitely a freedom. Also, religious freedoms are an issue. So I fight for freedom any day of the week.
Anything else there, Councilor Park?
Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Vinsley, anything?
I was actually going to ask about the time commitment issue, because this does prove to be more taxing than we assume it will be when we get started on this venture of City Council. But I believe he's pretty much addressed that in his writing down the questions and answers there at the beginning, which was very efficient, by the way. Thank you.
Anybody, Council President Dale, anything?
Sure, Mr. Smith. I think I'm on here.
Yeah, you're green.
I'll ask the 800-pound gorilla question. Councilors have been approached, it's even been in the Canby Herald, that you made comments in public that you were, in effect a lock for the appointment because of who you knew on the council. You spoke earlier about being forthright and honest and hitting it head on. I want to give you that opportunity.
Thank you. Yes, I did not go around to anyone in the city saying that. Quite to the contrary, one of my fellow Planning Commission members mentioned it to me, and I hemmed it around a little bit. I went, Councilor Coleman's office is in the same building. I went into his office and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And then I think I told one other person and my wife. And then, so I had told 3 people and my wife, and I got a call from the fellow from the newspaper. I had somebody come in that Councilor Parker was asking this question amongst other people, And the newspaper had been told that they were approached by somebody, a third person. So at that time when the newspaper called me, I had officially talked to more people about the rumor than I had actually talked to about the fact that I was interested in applying for it. I did mention it on the Planning Commission meeting that I didn't want to put my name in the hat for the vice chair of the Planning Commission again, because I was going to be, I don't know if I actually said applying for the city council position, but I think it was inferred, or it was mentioned, you know, that sort of that was where it was going. But no, it's an absolutely false statement, a rumor, I should say.
Yeah. So can you tell us about your attendance at the Planning Commission meetings the last couple of years? How many meetings you've actually attended and why you've missed so many?
I'm sure. The last couple of years, up until the leave I mentioned, I had perfect attendance, I believe. And then when I took the role as vice chairman of the state Republican Party, I went to a couple more meetings and told the folks there that I was going to step down because I had some other commitments I needed to attend to. And I was asked to stay on because at the time we had, I believe, 2 vacancies in the Planning Commission. And if I had resigned, there would have been 3 vacancies, and every single one of them would have had to have been at every single meeting, or we wouldn't have been able to make a quorum. So they asked me to stay on. I said, sure, I'll stay on if there's something particularly complex, because I do land use as part of my practice. I can come. If you don't have a quorum, call me, and I'll try and come. And so that was, I believe, at the May 2015 meeting. And then, so there were, I think, there was probably about meetings about every other month since then. And so in those 15 months, I probably missed about 7 meetings, but everybody knew it. We had a whole bunch of vacancies. I said specifically to them, if all the other chairs are filled, I will resign because I don't want to not be here if there's no other openings. And so, but those other positions weren't filled until just the last meeting when you guys appointed another Planning Commission member. But I had already, as of this summer, started resuming my duties on the Planning Commission. So my term as vice chairman of the Republican Party ends basically after this election, and then our next meeting anyways. So I was planning to, resume my duties.
As according to what I've seen in 2016, I think you've only made 1, actually, of the 2016.
Yeah, that's right. That's after May of 2015. So you said the last 2 years, I believe. Right. And so 2 years would be 24 months. So that was 15 months ago.
That's a side point, I think, maybe attendance at, it's something to talk about as a side note, attendance at commissions and whatnot. Anyway, so the partiality question is, I'm glad that was asked, but how, we do kind of mundane things at this level as opposed to being high up in the leadership of the Republican Party. We're fixing sidewalks and kind of approving liquor licenses and those sorts of things. So it is, of course, it's nonpartisan and it's us getting along and making kind of just basic policy. You'll be able to separate yourself and not use this as a platform for your message that you're broadcasting in your other nonprofit groups?
This would be a much, in sort of frankness, this would be a lot smaller platform to broadcast a message from. So that's, I don't think that would be a realistic concern. But in terms of setting anything aside, well, I've been observing the council now for 8, 9 years that I've had my law firm in council in Canby, and I don't think that partisanship and ideology has been set aside very well at all by anyone that's preceded me. So I think that I'd be able to do it as good, if not better, than I've seen in the past, and I would very wholeheartedly endeavor to do that, because like I said, it's not really something that should be a part to fixing sidewalks or any of those issues, as you mentioned. So even tonight we've witnessed some of that, partisan politicking, and that's not what I'm here to do. If I've been asked multiple times to run for, significantly higher office, and I don't want to do that. It's a volunteer. I do this because it's labor of love. I've got my profession. I've got my income. I'm not looking to run for higher offices.
We have time.
Yes.
Or so, okay. So, you're talking about the importance of diversity as a Christian man and whatnot. One of the groups, though, the Alliance for Defending Freedom, that's it's on the website and you're there. It says it refers to the ACLU. Yeah, the ACLU as having a radical vision for America. So, can you talk more about diversity and what that means to you?
Sure, I can talk a lot more about diversity, but again, in all frankness, I mean, if I was to pull up some of the groups and the statements by the Democratic Party of Oregon, they would say things that people might not like either. So I don't know which statement you're referencing from the Alliance Defending Freedom, but I can tell you that is one of the nation's largest organizations that's protecting freedom, both religious freedoms, First Amendments, a whole bunch of freedoms, and they're a fantastic organization full of Christian men and women that are fighting to preserve people's right to exercise their faith on a daily basis. And so, speaking to diversity, I can tell you that I have no prejudices against anybody. But again, being frank, I also think that people ought to be free to express their opinions without fear of the government coming and telling them that you can't have their opinion. In Oregon, we have a thing called Article 1 of the Constitution. Sections 2 and Section 3 are supposed to guarantee us our right to our opinion and our right to conscience. That isn't always the case, and sometimes people like me have to stand up and fight for the public.
Councilor Coleman.
Mayor, Mr. Smith, one of the challenges we have in our city is there's quite a few county roads that are in our city, and so I was going to ask your ideas on, if you have some ideas on how we can bring those up to standard and into the city. And then the second question I was going to ask is there's some 350,000 people that go through our Clackamas County Event Center every year, and for you to touch on how you feel about tourism.
I think, let me address the second question first. I think tourism is absolutely a fantastic aspect of Canby, both with the fairgrounds being there, and I think particularly if what's the waterfall development called?
Blue Heron.
When the Blue Heron development comes about, I think that will be a tremendous boon for the city of Canby, and exponentially expand the amount of tourism, the amount of business, the opportunity for Canby business owners to partake in the people that come to what would be a fantastic attraction, there. So we've got the fairgrounds, we've got that, we've got obviously other things. The waterfront. Now, most of it's in private ownership, and it's hard to develop anything useful along the waterfront. But I think we have a fantastic, geographical feature with the water going through over there that's sort of underutilized if you think of it from the perception of the public and the city. And if there would be ways to utilize our waterfront more, I think that would be fantastic for tourism, which is a great aspect of our community. With transportation, I mean, that's tough. I do know that counties are very resistant to turn any roads over to a city. The county wants that state money just as much as anybody else does, and the federal money just as anybody else does. So how to get them to transition that or give that back to the city, I mean, I think we'd probably have to do some sort of major effort to show how we would fund that. They would want to know that we could fund it as well as they do, when they're getting the state and federal money to work on their roads. But I think transportation issues, are one of the key issues. I mean, we have a fantastic city that has, one major entry and one major exit. If you don't count, coming from the backside of Oregon City and Molalla, which makes transportation a nightmare. And keeping those roads, I mean, we all see the road coming up from the south going across the river. Every 2 months, the thing has to be repaired. And that's a nightmare, and I don't have all the solutions for fixing transportation, but I'd be open to creatively thinking about ways to make that happen.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith? No? Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Josiah Rubio, you are up, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good.
Joe Kyle Rubio, nice to meet everybody.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, I'm gonna try to keep it short. I said I was born and raised in Los Angeles. When I was 13 years old, I didn't speak any Spanish, and I moved to a family farm in Mexico for approximately 2 years. Then I went back to Los Angeles, and then I joined the Army. From there, I became a mechanic, and became a master mechanic, and opened what they call smog shops. I think here it's called DEQ. And opened and sold about 8 of those. And then I became a nurse. And the first time I came to Oregon was in 1994. Became a resident here in 2003. And the first job I had here was at Marquis Care as a charge nurse. What else? I guess my passion has always been kind of being a bridge for people who don't speak certain languages and trying to educate them on whatever issues they may have or perceive. I did about 10 years of Little League coaching that included being a commissioner for a Junior Athletic Association. I coached approximately over 1,000 kids there in the 10 years that I was there. Excuse me. And let's see what else. During that time, I was able to have 2 city council members that were part of our board, and I was able to see and hear the day-to-day activities and issues that they would have as being on the city council. And one thing that I noticed that everybody always had issue with was with communication. Whether they didn't understand what was going on, or maybe people in higher positions couldn't communicate what was the issues that was affecting them to make certain decisions or not make certain decisions. And I kind of became a person that was the bridge to that, to help people on both sides understand what was going on. Right now I have the last of my 5 kids. All of my 4 kids are adults now, and I have a 9-year-old. And I'm just looking forward for him to finish school out here in Canby and being just experiencing this small town lifestyle that I think is very, very special. The sense of community and family is something that's really, really special in my mind. And I'd like to be part of that as a city council member.
I want to pop off a couple of questions here from Mr. Jacoya.
I had a question.
Mr. Rubio.
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
Was I supposed to just start out with that, or is I supposed to go into everything like the gentleman just did?
Teach their own style. You're
Okay.
fine with how you did it. What we can just kind of pick and choose here if you'd
Okay.
like, you know. So if you're appointed to the current city council vacancy, would you consider running for the seat in November of 2018?
Definitely. I mean, I think it's a privilege and an honor to run on the city council and to help help the city, you know, city and the community, I guess, visualize and then execute whatever goals they have. Because at the end of the day, it's for our kids and the next generations. And tackling some issues has always been, I always felt that it's been kind of fun working with a group of people that we have certain issues and then figuring out those issues together. But at the same time, even though it's majority rule, keeping the minority, how would you say, happy, or keeping them in mind. And that's sometimes kind of hard.
What do you think are the most pressing problems or issues in Canby right now?
The major one is that there's not just one, there's so many. And so I think the first one would be that communication. It's like for being a coach and having all these kids, one thing, and then being a nurse, because we have to do, it's called patient education, disease process, medication, all these different things. It's all about teaching people. But whenever you see someone who's really pissed off, it's always because they don't understand what's going on. And the person they're mad about or at is they're not communicating the full story. So it all goes back to communication. If you can figure out how to communicate and just break it down. Everybody understands different things. Sometimes people have their blinders on and look at one thing, and it's kind of fun to break those blinders off and show them, wait a minute, look at all this. Or help them articulate what they're trying to say versus just pointing fingers and yelling at somebody. And I think that's the fun part about